Welcome to this episode of The Good, The Bad and The Odd One Out with your host Mark. In this one I want to continue indulging my mild obsession with Star Trek by continuing my reviews of the original series. Now we're up to Season 2, Episode 21, so what I'll be doing is Episode 21 to 26, which brings us to the end of Season 2. Okay, so the first one in this run, Episode 21, Season 2, was a story called Patterns of Force. Now, it's kind of a famous one in terms of, when you talk about Star Trek episodes, in terms of the one where something happened. This is the one where they go back to the equivalent of Nazi Germany. It's actually a completely different planet with humanoid life forms. Some Earth historian has landed there, tried to impose some of the good, I hate to use this phrase, but some of the good things about Nazi Germany, which was about productivity and sort of driving the economy and stuff like that. Unfortunately, all the other bad things stuck to, so we're getting like equivalent of Nazi Germany on another planet, whereas they're not hating Jews, they're in another alien civilization. It's got an interesting central conceit, I guess. And it's a variant of the ideas we've already seen in the episode A Piece of the Action, which was, transplanting Chicago 1930s gangsters to another planet. And there was some good writing and action. And honestly, it did feel like Tarantino was kind of influenced by this episode in Inglourious Basterds. There was like a lot of elements that felt like they had been ultimately bled into Inglourious Basterds, which is kind of interesting. The only downside really to it was very enjoyable, but the only downside really was the end result really fast to be a sort of realistic kind of ending, but none of it was realistic, so it doesn't really matter. Funny enough, I don't believe this episode aired in Germany for many years. I think it was only like in 2010 or something it was finally aired in Germany because of the obvious Nazi symbolism. They're wearing swastikas and so on. It was kind of weird seeing Spock in a Nazi outfit, and Kirk, but it's definitely a memorable episode if for nothing else for that. That brings us to episode 22 of season 2, which is an episode called By Any Other Name. Now, I think this is mostly one of those minor episodes, but to me, this one really stands out, and it's notable for three things. I think it's got the most beautiful woman in Star Trek, certainly in the original series, in the form of Barbara Boucher, who is a stunning looking actress. If you Google and find a still of her, she looks pretty good, but she looks even better when she's in movement. She's very graceful. She was in a few Italian films too, but the only other really notable thing she was in, as far as I'm concerned, is the 1967 version of Casino Royale, where she played Moneypenny. She was really beautiful looking in that too. I'm a fan of hers, frankly. This is also notable because I believe it's the first episode where a red shirt dies, but the red shirt's a woman. In fact, she's the only red shirt that does die. That is kind of unusual, hooray for feminism. Yeah. And also, in this one, I think we get our first look at Scottish quarters. It might even be the only look at Scottish quarters. It's kind of really obvious it's Scottish quarters in that they've decked it out with things like bagpipes, kilts on the wall, and various other stereotypical kind of motifs. But it's got this really cool plaque thing, which is kind of like a semi-surreal, not surreal, what do I mean? It's sort of an interpretation of the Enterprise, I think, in terms of metal plates. It's kind of cool looking. I really like it, actually. Now, this one contains lots of previous Star Treks, such as aliens return, taking on human form, and then being kind of polluted by the humanness of that form, which we saw in, say, Catspaw. It goes back to the idea of an energy barrier at the edge of the galaxy, which right way back in, I think one of the first episodes, certainly the first production episode. No, in fact, I'm thinking about it, I think it was the original second pilot, which then got turned into like episode 8 or something, which is Where No Man Has Gone Before. It goes through aliens using tech to control the crew, which is kind of similar to Squire Gothos and so on. And then Kirk, a well-worn Star Trek meme of Sturk getting an alien lady on his side, by kissing her and sort of not flirting, but just being full on with her, trying to confuse her with with her own lusts, I guess, just to get out of a bad situation, which he did in the Gamesters of Triskelion a few episodes before this. It's a fun episode. I also recognise one of the other alien characters as being in a previous episode. He was definitely in an episode called The Naked Time, but as a completely different character. Now, this is an interesting episode. It starts off grim and threatening, and I think they realise during production they need to lighten it up a bit, and it becomes kind of more fun. Like, what? Excuse me, it's getting a bit late. Where was I? Oh yeah, it lightens up a bit, and the crew realise the humanness that these aliens have taken on is affecting them, so they try to use that against them. Now, it's kind of interesting. The head alien, the race is called the Kelvins. Spock does a distance mime meld one and sees what their real form's like, and they sound very Lovecraftian before they become human. They sound like they're monstrous sized. They've got hundreds of tentacles, or 100 tentacles, and each tentacle is capable of doing an independent task. So the brain power must be amazing. Basically they turn this on. They use various tricks to sort of show the Kelvin that they're humans now. Kirk uses the obvious one of seduction. Scotty basically drinks an alien under the table, which is kind of fun. McCoy starts giving one of the aliens a shot a day to sort of as a supplement, but it's actually like it's basically making the guy really cross about everything, super irritable. And then Spock, we have winding up the head alien with jealousy by talking about what Kirk's doing with this woman. So they're basically playing on human emotions and foibles. Now, I like this episode, as I say, more than most. And one of the reasons I like it is, back in the 70s, I mean, we're talking a long time ago, maybe the early 80s, I actually owned this episode on Super 8. I used to have a projector. And I was, a lad when I had this projector, a teenager. And film was expensive, and I used to have to work for months to be able to buy things. And I do remember working for about 3 months to get enough money to buy a film, and went to the shop. The film I wanted, I can't remember what it was. It may have been something like Twins of Evil or something. They actually had this, and I bought this episode instead. So I spent what I think would be equivalent to like £300 now, or $400, $500, something like that now, to buy one episode of Star Trek, which sounds mind-blowingly stupid, actually, now I say about it. But hey, that's what you did back then if you wanted films. It was Super 8 was the medium, and it was very expensive. So it's just, because of that, this is the episode I've seen the most number of times. I must have seen it 15 times. At least. But I still like it. I really like it a lot. Though I realise my view of it is kind of through the lens of nostalgia goggles kind of thing. But it's a minor episode, but a really enjoyable one. That brings us on to episode 23, Omega Glory. Wow, again, this like the one by any other name, starts off tense and serious, and actually really quite effective, and you're really drawn in. And then it appears to be a whodunit. It's going to be a whodunit. Then it completely changes tack. They go to this planet, and there's these two races fighting. One's a sort of looks Asian, and the other looks white, but kind of stoic, almost like almost Slavic or maybe Native American kind of thing. They actually refer to it in the text as sort of being like Native American. And it goes along like that, and then it's sort of mad, and it turns out we're in some sort of socio-evolution which matches Earth, and it's kind of almost taking the sort of Cold War of the late 60s and extending it hundreds of years into the future to see how things would change and evolve. And it even went to one side was the Yankees, and the others were the the communists. And their holy words was a garbled version of the American Pledge of Allegiance. This is completely bananas. It's ridiculous, even for sort of Star Trek standards, and it kind of spoils it because it's just so silly. And I just feel that maybe this week the scriptwriters were on some particularly powerful psychedelic drugs or something. I don't know. It was enjoyable, but it just seemed dopey. 24, episode 24 was The Ultimate Computer. This one was very interesting. I enjoyed this a lot. It starred William Marshall, who, if you've listened to our previous podcast, I've talked about in terms of being the main character in Blackula and Scream, which I'm a fan of those films. And he is a good actor, and he's imposing, he's got real presence. And it's really good to see a black man in such a prominent central role. He's meant to be a genius of computer science, which is really terrific to see in a late 60s programme. This is one of the more positive aspects of Roddenberry's influence on Star Trek. He had a few negatives, but this one really sung in terms of like going for an ideal. Funny enough, the story kind of feels like it was ripped off to be used in 2001. I'm sure because of production days and so on. 2001 was already in production when this was made. Oh, sorry, I hope I'm not making you tired. So I'm sure it wasn't a rip-off. It's just one of those convergent ideas in the air kind of thing, I think. This particular episode has a number of really good updated special effects, especially when you see a set of starships lining up to attack the Enterprise. That was really cool. I would have preferred a bit more Spock being central, because he was really effective in this episode, I think, but not used that much. And there was a little too much talking about, what's the nature of man if he gets replaced by a machine kind of stuff, which I found a bit dull. But overall, I thought this was a really good episode. Right, number 25. Another episode where it's a real classic, the one where kind of stuff. Bread and Circuses. Yeah, so Bread and Circuses is based on this convergent evolution idea. This was as ridiculous as any of the others of this kind, but it was kind of fun. It cracked along at a fair pace, and nothing really was resolved apart from Kirk, Spock, and McCoy escaping and leaving the planet they left behind. There was a kind of an odd scene as well where McCoy lays into Spock about having no feelings, but it was very generic, could have gone in any episode, so it didn't really make sense here. I think it felt more like padding. It wasn't bad though. One thing that struck out to me was the Roman state was kind of fascist, and the guards were in white helmets, which I think was a thing. I noticed the riot cops in America in the 60s wore white helmets in the race riots in the mid-60s. And you see white helmets occurring in American science fiction movies, the 70s and 80s, where there's a near-future America that's kind of fascistic. For example, I think there's ones in Escape from the Planet of the Apes. Dead Zone has some, though they're more and more like white hard hats. I think it even occurs in the Hunger Games. I thought it was kind of interesting. That there was that connection. It was a decent enough episode, despite all that, really. That brings us to the last one, which was a very odd episode. It's called Assignment Earth. Really, it was a backdoor pilot. And Kirk and Spock and so on aren't really in it that much. They interrupt someone beaming, and it's this guy who turns out to have been, he's human, but he's been trained by aliens to look over Earth. He goes to this office where he's meant to go. His name's Gary Seven, by the way. And the person he's meant to meet isn't there, but he kind of recruits a young female assistant who's played by Terry Garr, very cute in this, called Roberta is her character. And there's also a black cat who is kind of an alien, it appears towards the end. And Kirk and Spock kind of pop up now and again. But it's basically this. Now, this guy's got a pen that's very much like a sonic screwdriver. He's travelling through space. He's a guardian of Earth. He's got this apartment that appears to be bigger on the inside than seems to be much bigger than it should be. It's kind of Doctor Who. They're ripping off Doctor Who. It's kind of, if you view it as a mashup of Doctor Who and Star Trek, it's kind of fun, but it doesn't really make any sense. The pilot didn't go anywhere, but it was okay. It was reasonably entertaining. It's just don't expect much Star Trek to be in it. Okay, so that's my roundup of season 2. There's some real good ones here. I think season 1 is clearly the one with the most classic episodes. However, this season does contain my very favourite of all, which is A Mock Time. Okay, so next one we do with this, it'll be the slightly more notorious season 3. Bye from me.
Fascinating.